Warhammer 40k Dawn of War was released in September 2004 and is an underrated RTS game from the very rich world of Warhammer. It also featured 3 major DLC packs. I will talk about the first one here, Winter Assault, but I will leave the other 2 for future videos because I consider that those deserve their videos of their own. Now, back to Dawn of War. I think people overlook this game a lot when they talk about top tier RTS games, whether it's nostalgia towards the other more reputable franchises or just personal preference. Objectively speaking, I believe that Dawn of War brings a lot of new ideas that made this game maybe a little bit ahead of its time. I remember playing this game when it first came out and it felt kind of a lonely world, because none of my friends gave it a try, so it was a bit disappointing. But in the back of my head, this game was always up there alongside the greats of that era, such as Age of Empires 2, Warcraft 3 and StarCraft. For me, there's a lot of similarities between this game, Warcraft 3 and StarCraft. But let's start with the beginning and talk a bit about the storyline. As always, without giving away too much here, the main character is a very ambitious general that leads his troops in the never-ending war against the orcs, when they stumble upon a bigger threat that might lie in the shadows. I'm gonna stop with the details here, in case some of you might want to play it for the first time, but overall I've enjoyed the story for what it is. It's not something that will blow your mind, but it's above average, I would say. Although I'm not a big Warhammer fan and I don't know too much about this universe, the game did manage to make me feel like these guys were part of something much bigger, and that the world that they live in is very well drawn out and offers a lot of in-depth stories and tales. I think the story is also helped out a lot by the good voice actors, who can definitely sell the characters that they voice as being solid individuals both physically and mentally. Gameplay wise, the game gets you hooked instantly in my humble opinion. It has a great mission interface. The way every mission's inception is described in the menu by the narrator, and the way the little clip in the small screen is playing really gets you ready for the challenges that lie ahead. I enjoyed that aspect a lot in this game, and you will have to be ready because this game is no slouch, and if you think that you will flex with your skills on it, you will have another thing coming, guys. The game can be extremely challenging in the higher difficulty settings, but you can always turn down the difficulty in case you are struggling and you don't want to spend too much time stuck in a certain mission, so that's a good point, that's a good thing in my humble opinion. I started out by playing the game on the hard difficulty, but I was humbled pretty early on, and by the 3rd mission I had to turn off the difficulty a bit because otherwise it would have taken me even more time to make this video. I will say though that I don't think that's the correct way to playing a game like this. I think you have to find a good balance for the game to offer you a challenge, but at the same time for the game to not get too frustrating. For me, bouncing between the hard difficulty and the medium one was the sweet spot, considering I haven't played an RTS game in recent memory. One of the ways this game differentiates itself from other legendary RTS games of its time is that instead of having every resource readily found in your base, you have to venture out on the map in order to capture certain stations. And this is the only way to get one of the 2 resources that the game uses and offers for you to build up your base and to train a well thought out army. I loved this aspect of the game because it challenges you to go outside your comfort zone and does not really allow you the luxury of barricading yourself in your base until you have the perfect combination of units and you are ready to attack. It might be a little bit annoying for players that like to play in a very defensive way, but if you keep an open mind, you will find a lot of fun here. Also, another thing that Dawn of War does differently is the way you upgrade and recruit units. Yes, initially you do the classic build a barrack and train units way, but after you've trained your individuals, your unit, you can then customize it and increase the number of soldiers within the group to your preference. This gives a lot of depth in my opinion, as you can for example equip your marine with different kinds of weapons depending on the type of enemies you encounter. For example, if you have a mass of orcs in front of you, then you will give your marines some heavy rifles, right? On the other hand, if you have an armored brigade in front of you, then maybe it's a good idea to give your marines some rocket launchers until you are able to train armored units yourself. You can also train captains to each rifle unit individually, so there's a lot of things that you can do strategically that you are not able to do in other franchises that I've mentioned before. Another amazing and unique feature for the time is that you can actually customize the appearance of your marines in the game. That's such a good idea, and to this day you don't see that too often in RTS games. Now, all that being said, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, guys. The game has some drawbacks as well. For example, from certain angles, when you look at the map in the fog of war, you can basically see everything through it. Or that's the case in the campaign maps, at least. I'm not 100% sure about the multiplayer games, as I haven't tried playing multiplayer games. Units are really slow, and the AI is not the best when it comes to how your units move on the map. They can easily get blocked by other units, and if you're not careful on how you place them, when for example you attack an enemy base, then you can be left with half of your units fighting while the other half are just spectating and waiting for their turn to join the fun. Also, and I know this is a small detail, but why are the avatars for the units just pictures? I mean, come on, 7 years before this game, StarCraft had full 3D animations for their avatars, so there's really no excuse. I think it's a poor choice, and while I know it's not a big thing, it might be an indication of how the developers skipped some of the finishing touches that this game could have gotten otherwise. Also, most of the times, regardless of what a mission tells me to do, if I have the tools necessary, then I will always try to clean the map of the enemies. It's just a fun way for me to play RTS games. But here, that might not be our best option all the time. In one of the missions in the Winter Assault DLC, I had to capture and sacrifice some individuals, but due to the fact that by the time I reached that point I cleaned the map of my enemies, I had to wait until new enemies were dropped into the map and then had to capture multiple units in order to complete my objective. Why not just include a sort of a complete victory option in every mission? Now, I do realize that that's not 100% optimal from a storytelling perspective, but me wasting an extra hour after I've already invested a lot of time to clean up the map feels unnecessary and a bit frustrating if I'm being honest. Talking about the Winter Assault DLC, the missions here are more challenging for sure. The game's difficulty kicks up a notch, but it's all for the greater good. It's more challenging and it can really break you if you want to achieve the objectives on a high difficulty setting. Story-wise, this DLC does not offer too much, it's not worth talking too much about it. Basically, you find two camps. One that consists of orcs and chaos forces, while the other one is represented by the Imperial Guard and the Eldars, that are fighting to gain control of a giant mech that could help tip the balance of forces in the Great War. It's not a long campaign, but what is cool about it is that you can play with both sides, so depending on who you choose, obviously the missions will play out differently, and that offers a great replay value. I personally did not try both alliances. I just used the orcs and the chaos forces as I was a bit burned out by the Imperial forces, although these forces are not to be confused with the Space Marines that you have in the main game. It was a decent experience, but unless you really like the base game and you just want more, I would skip this DLC and maybe move to the other ones that I will talk about in future videos. I gotta say though, I almost went nuts in the first 2 or 3 missions with the orcs, as the main leader could not stop saying the same damn phrase over and over again. On the other hand, the way orcs are represented in this game is just hilarious. There were a few moments here where I just laughed at how they were behaving and what they were saying. And if you are looking to get a similar experience, like for example what you get in the orcs of Warcraft 3, well, this might not be the DLC for you. They're not better. They're not worse, it's just a different take on them, in my humble opinion. Overall, this is a great game that I've enjoyed playing back when it came out and right now to make this video. I would say this is still fun for sure. The Winter Assault might be a skippable DLC, but it's not a bad offering at all. The price is still a bit too high in my humble opinion. Currently the first game with all the 3 DLCs cost 40 euros. I think that's a bit too much for a 60-year-old game, but that being said, there's a lot of RTS hours that are offered for the money. This game is a great glimpse in the past on a game that wasn't afraid of trying out new things and pushing the boundaries in different ways than the classic RTS recipe usually does. Guys, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, then subscribe to the channel and leave me some feedback. And maybe tell me what games would you like me to do next. I definitely have a long list of games that I want to do and I have to do, but every now and then I can derail from that if you have any suggestions. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, stay safe, stay clean, and stay strong.